Well, Brian is he's not one of these guys. He just the short shoulders.
What's his name? His name?
Paul. Yeah. This is Officer Allison with the DWI unit.
How you doing, Paul?
I guess they've got more stuff they're working on right now. Authority of the chief's office. So he's just going to talk to you a little bit here. Just listen to what he's got to say, and we'll go from there. Okay.
Okay.
The moment Officer Paul Fensick walked through that door, his own sergeant and lieutenant clocked it immediately. Something was off. His eyes, his movement, his energy. Whatever it was the people trained to notice exactly this kind of thing noticed. But here's the part that should make your stomach drop.
Lawyer present to advise you in a court while your trial. You may have your own lawyer present, or if you're unable to employ a lawyer, the court will appoint a lawyer free of charge and at the time you want. If you decide to talk to anyone, you can. You can stop talking to them anytime you want. The above rights or continue rights may be urged by any stage of proceedings. Paul, do you understand these rights as I've read them to you?
Yes.
Okay, Paul, would you be willing to submit this field sobriety test?
A field sobriety test?
Yes, sir. A standardized field sobriety test.
Even after they noticed, he still got into a marked patrol vehicle and drove away. A cop, drunk, behind the wheel of a police car at 6 a.m. And when they finally caught up to him, tested him, and arrested him right there in his own station, his blood alcohol came back at more than twice the legal limit. A cooler full of beer in the trunk. An open container in the center console. This wasn't a lapse. This was a routine. And that word, routine, is exactly what I want to sit with today. Because this story isn't just about one drunk cop in San Antonio. This is about what it means when the people with the badge, the gun, the authority to make split-second decisions about your life show up like this. And if you look a certain way in America, you already know why that matters more than most people want to admit. Before we get into it, if you're new here, this channel is dedicated to documenting, analyzing, and calling out the systems that put Black lives at risk every single day in this country. Hit subscribe. Turn on notifications, because we're not letting these stories disappear into the news cycle. Now, let's get into it. Let me paint this picture properly, because the setting matters enormously here.
Take the harm back.
Yeah, you wonder if that comes from his background.
He's on the same team. People don't realize it.
It doesn't seem that there's any connection between these parties, but...
Nobody wants to be here, Paul. I promise you that. But we do have to make a decision on what you want to do.
Well, I can't refuse.
It's your choice. You
If I refuse, I go to jail.
You can refuse the P test. At this point, what you do is all up to you. But right now, this isn't administrative stuff. So this is all you. This is all your.
At this point, Paul, your supervisor around immigration. It's really Officer Allison. And again, like you said, nobody wants to be here, but here we are. So moving forward, it has nothing to do with them. It's you either want to participate with the field sobriety test or you don't.
This is not a traffic stop on a highway at 2 a.m. This is not some off-duty incident at a bar on a Saturday night. This happened at roll call, inside a police substation, at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday, July 31st, 2025. Roll call, for those who don't know, is where officers begin their shift. It's where supervisors give assignments, review protocols, and assess their team. It is, by definition, the moment when a commanding officer looks their people in the eye and determines whether they are fit for duty. And Paul Fensick, 18-year veteran of the San Antonio Police Department, walked into that room drunk. Not buzzed, not had a drink the night before. We're talking a BAC of 0.15 or above. The legal limit in Texas is 0.08. He was nearly double that, and Texas law specifically elevates a DWI to a Class A misdemeanor when the BAC hits 0.15 or higher. That carries up to a year in county jail and fines up to $4,000. His supervisors saw it right away. Credit where it's due, they did not look the other way. A lieutenant and sergeant were reportedly both present. And they called it, but, and this is critical, there was a gap. Because somewhere in that gap between we see something wrong and we do something about it, Fensick got into a marked patrol vehicle and drove. There's video of it.
Would you be willing to submit to that?
I wasn't driving.
Evidently, you have been driving, I guess. So that's where this is.
I was in the parking lot.
We know this because when Fensick tells Officer Allison during the sobriety test that he wasn't driving, that he was just in the parking lot, Officer Allison responds plainly, "Yeah, I guess there's video of you driving." Think about that. The man is standing in his own station, talking to a DWI officer, being told there's footage of him operating a police vehicle while drunk, and his first move is to deny it. That tells you something about the mindset. That tells you something about the culture of protection and deflection that exists in law enforcement, even when you are caught in your own building, by your own people. The instinct is still to minimize, deny, and redirect. Now, I want to be clear, his colleagues ultimately did the right thing, and we are going to talk about that. But we also need to talk about what could have happened in that window, what almost happened, and what does happen every single day when nobody in that roll call room feels empowered to intervene. We have audio and transcripts from inside the station that day, and I want to walk through some of what was captured because it's revealing in ways that go beyond just the facts of the case. When Officer Allison arrives to conduct the field sobriety evaluation, Fensick is already known to the people in that room. He's not a suspect they pulled off the street. He is a colleague. An 18-year veteran. Someone these officers have presumably worked alongside, eaten lunch with, maybe even trusted with their lives in the field. And you can hear that tension in the conversation. At one point, before Fensick agrees to take the test, one of the supervisors says, and I'm paraphrasing, "Nobody wants to be here, Paul. I promise you that. Nobody wants to be here." Read that again. Nobody wants to be here. And I understand, on a human level, what that means. It is genuinely uncomfortable to arrest a colleague. It is uncomfortable to watch someone you work with be put in handcuffs. There is real institutional loyalty in policing. Sometimes it functions as camaraderie, sometimes it functions as obstruction. In this case, the officers moved forward, but the language tells you what was pulling in the other direction.
Sir, you're going to take 9 heel-to-toe steps straight along that imaginary line. As you're walking along that line, you're going to look down at your feet, count your steps out loud, looking down at your feet. Once you start, you can't stop. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate 3 steps. You're going to do 9, and then I'll simulate the turn and steps back. Okay, once I tell you to begin, what you're going to do, you're going to walk along that imaginary line just like so. 1, 2, 3. This is your simulated 9th step. Once you get to your 9th step, you can take a series of small turns in the safe first steps in a safe and controlled manner to create a turn. 9 heel-to-toe steps back. 1, 2, 3. Again, Paul. Once I tell you to start, make sure you're walking along that line, touching heel to toe, arms by your side, counting your steps out loud.
Fensick himself asks more than once whether refusing the test would mean going to jail. He's trying to find an exit. He says at one point, "I can't refuse?" And another officer tells him, "This is all you at this point, Paul." Eventually, Fensick agrees. And what follows is a full, standardized field sobriety evaluation, the same battery of tests that police officers administer to civilians every single day on the side of the road. The horizontal gaze nystagmus, tracking a pen with the eyes. The walk and turn 9 heel-to-toe steps, a controlled turn, 9 steps back. The one-leg stand, raising 1 foot 6 inches off the ground, counting out loud. The Romberg balance test, head back, eyes closed, estimate 30 seconds. The finger-to-nose test, the alphabet from C to P, counting backwards from 54 to 41. Fensick went through all of it. He completed the tests. And there's something almost surreal about watching a trained police officer, someone who has administered these exact evaluations to civilians, who knows exactly what officers are looking for, who could probably recite the scoring criteria in his sleep, going through them himself. He skips 50 in the countdown, he's got some wobble, and at the end of it, the conclusion is clear. He gets arrested. In his own station, by his own department. Officer Allison wraps up the evaluation and says, "I'm going to have to do that uncomfortable thing." And Fensick turns around. 18 years on the force, thousands of arrests, and now he's the one with his hands behind his back. Here is the detail that changes everything. When officers searched Fensick's patrol vehicle, the marked police car he drove while drunk, they found 2 things. An open beer container in the center console, and a cooler full of unopened beer in the car. Let that sink in. Not a flask, not a bottle of something he was trying to hide. A cooler, stocked and ready, in a police cruiser, at the start of a morning shift. That is not a bad night that bled into a bad morning. That is not a one-time mistake made under unusual circumstances. That is infrastructure. That is preparation. That is somebody who had done this or something very close to it before and had a system. The question the transcript itself poses is the right one. How many mornings before this one looked exactly the same and nobody knew? And I want to extend that question because this is where it becomes about more than Paul Fensick. How many mornings did he go out on patrol like this? How many traffic stops did he make? How many pedestrians did he interact with? How many people, disproportionately black people, because that is simply the reality of policing in cities like San Antonio, were pulled over, questioned, searched, or arrested by a man who was drunk on duty? We don't know. And that's the horror of it. Because the criminal justice system treats officer misconduct as isolated incidents. Every internal affairs investigation, every disciplinary hearing, every lawsuit, they're all built around the specific incident in front of them. But what you don't get is the full accounting. You don't get to audit an 18-year career through the lens of what we now know about this man's habits. Think about what it means to be stopped by an impaired officer. Your fate in that moment is in the hands of someone whose judgment is compromised, whose reflexes are slower, whose emotional regulation, already a known issue in high-stress professions, is further degraded by alcohol. And if something goes wrong, if he makes the wrong call, draws his weapon, escalates a situation that didn't need to be escalated, the burden of that falls on the person standing in front of him. Not on Paul Fensick, on the civilian. This is the part that does not make the press release. The SAPD statement is clean and institutional. Chief McManus calls it a clear violation of the public's trust. He requests expedited termination proceedings, and that is the right response procedurally. But it doesn't touch what I just described. Now I want to talk about the thing that this story is really about, for this channel and for the community watching. When we talk about dangerous cops, impaired cops, unstable cops, cops who carry unprocessed trauma, addiction, or aggression onto the job, we have to talk about who bears the cost of that. And the answer, consistently, disproportionately, documentably, is black people. San Antonio is a majority-minority city. Its South Patrol District, where Fensick was assigned, covers communities that are predominantly Hispanic and black. When an impaired officer is out on patrol in those neighborhoods, the people most likely to encounter him are people of color. That's not a political statement. That's demographics. And here's what we know about how impaired judgment interacts with implicit bias in policing. Study after study has shown that racial bias in use of force decisions is not primarily a function of overt racism. It's a function of automatic, fast, fear-based processing. The kind of processing that kicks in when an officer is in a high-stress moment and doesn't have time to think carefully. The kind of processing that is made worse by substances. The kind of processing that leads to a black man being perceived as more threatening, more non-compliant, more dangerous in the fraction of a second before a decision is made. Now, add alcohol to that. Add 0.15 back to that equation. Add slower reaction time. Add impaired emotional regulation. Add a man who, based on the evidence, had been doing this long enough to bring a stocked cooler with him to work. That is not a public servant. That is a loaded weapon pointed at a community. And I want to talk about what trigger-happy actually means in this context, because it's not just a figure of speech. There is documented research on how alcohol affects decision-making in use-of-force scenarios. A 2020 study published in the journal Police Quarterly examined how impairment affects officers' threat perception and found that impaired officers were both slower to respond to actual threats and more likely to misidentify non-threatening behavior as threatening. That is the worst possible combination. You are less capable of protecting yourself or others from actual danger, while simultaneously more likely to create danger where there wasn't any. What does that look like on a traffic stop in a black neighborhood at 7 in the morning? It looks like Philando Castile reaching for his ID and an officer panicking. It looks like Breonna Taylor's apartment being stormed based on faulty information by officers who were not operating with clear minds and clear protocols. It looks like Walter Scott running from a traffic stop and an officer deciding that running warranted death. I am not saying Paul Fensick would have done any of those things. I am saying that impaired judgment, racial bias, and a gun are a combination that has already produced those outcomes repeatedly in documented cases with no accountability, and that every drunk officer on patrol represents that risk, made worse. And here's what makes it land differently when you're black in America. You don't get to know. You don't get to ask the officer who pulled you over whether he's been drinking. You don't get a heads up. You just get the flashing lights in your rearview mirror, and in the seconds that follow, your life is at the mercy of whoever is walking towards you. That's the reality. And it's why what happened on July 31st matters far beyond San Antonio. I said earlier that credit goes to the colleagues and supervisors who noticed and who acted. And I mean that. They did what the system is supposed to do. But let's be honest about how close it came to going differently. The supervisors noticed at roll call. They did not immediately prevent him from accessing a vehicle. There was a gap enough of one that Fensick got into that patrol car and drove. If that gap had been a little longer, he'd have been out on the streets. And the reason that gap exists is cultural. In police departments across this country, there is enormous pressure, spoken and unspoken, to protect your own. The phrase, "nobody wants to be here," Paul captures it perfectly. Even in a case this clear-cut, a man visibly drunk at 6 in the morning with a cooler of beer in his trunk, the atmosphere in that room was one of reluctance, of discomfort, of wishing it weren't happening. That reluctance is the crack in the system. And in cases where the evidence isn't this obvious, where an officer has a bad attitude, uses excessive force, makes racially charged comments, handles a situation poorly, that reluctance becomes a wall that protects officers and exposes communities. The data backs this up. A 2019 report by the Invisible Institute in Chicago documented thousands of police misconduct complaints that resulted in zero disciplinary action because fellow officers either refused to corroborate civilian accounts or actively disputed them. In New York City, the CCRB Civilian Complaint Review Board has documented for decades how difficult it is to sustain complaints against officers when the department controls the investigation. The system of police accountability in America is fundamentally broken, and it is broken in ways that specifically harm black and brown communities because those are the communities most likely to file complaints, most likely to be in contact with police, and least likely to be believed when something goes wrong. Paul Fensick got caught because he made it impossible not to catch him. He showed up drunk to roll call, he drove a marked police vehicle on camera, he blew more than twice the legal limit. Most misconduct doesn't come with that level of evidence. Most of it happens in the dark, on the side of a road, in an interrogation room, in a moment that is officer's word against civilian's word, and we know how that math works. So what do we do with this? First, we acknowledge what went right. The officers who noticed acted. Chief McManus publicly condemned the behavior and called for expedited termination. There was no attempt, as far as we know, to quietly reassign Fensick or sweep this under the rug. That is what accountability looks like at the procedural level, and it matters. But accountability cannot stop at the individual, because Paul Fensick is not an anomaly, he is a product. He is a product of a profession with historically high rates of alcohol use disorder. Studies estimate that between 11 and 23% of law enforcement officers meet the clinical criteria for problem. Drinking, compared to around 7% of the general population. He is a product of a culture that does not adequately monitor, support, or intervene with officers who are struggling. He is a product of a system where an officer can apparently bring a cooler of beer to work in a patrol car, and it takes showing up visibly intoxicated to roll call before anyone does anything. What accountability looks like at the systemic level is mandatory, randomized, alcohol, and substance testing. It is mental health and addiction support that officers are not penalized for using. It is early intervention protocols that flag behavior changes before they become criminal. It is civilian oversight boards with real power, not advisory roles, not rubber stamps, but actual authority to investigate and discipline. And it is a reckoning with what it means for communities of color to be policed by a system that cannot or will not police itself. Fensick is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. The legal process will run its course. But the deeper question, the one that doesn't go away when this case is closed, is who else is out there? Who else is showing up impaired? Who else has a routine that nobody has caught yet? And who's going to pay the price when they do? This story out of San Antonio is one data point, one arrest, one officer. But it opens a window into something much larger, the relationship between officer fitness, racial bias, and community safety. And for Black Americans, that relationship is not abstract. It is the traffic stop. It is the knock on the door. It is the encounter that you didn't ask for and can't opt out of. The fact that Fensick's colleagues caught him matters. The fact that he's facing consequences matters. But justice is not just about what happens to one man. It's about building systems that protect communities before the drunk officer with the cooler full of beer makes it out onto the street. We're going to keep watching this case. Drop a comment. What do you think should happen? What does real accountability look like to you? And if this video opened your eyes, share it. Because the only way these stories create change is if enough people are paying attention. I'll see you in the next one.
Okay, same thing, eyes and eyes only, don't use your head. I'm going to go up with it, okay? Mm-hmm. All right, Paul, go ahead and relax. All right, sir. Next thing I'm going to ask you to do is face the wall over there, okay? Imagine a straight line, okay? I need you to place your left foot on said line. Try to go towards the middle there, a little bit to your right. Right there, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, place your right foot touching heel to toe in front of your left foot, arms by your side. I need you to maintain that position until I tell you to begin. Do you understand, Paul? Can I get a verbal yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. All right. When I tell you to begin, sir, you're going to take 9 heel to toe steps straight along that imaginary line. As you're walking along that line, you're going to look down at your feet, count your steps out loud, looking down at your feet. Once you start, you can't stop. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate 3 steps. You're going to do 9. and then I'll simulate the turn and steps back. Okay. Once I tell you to begin, what you're going to do, you're going to walk along that imaginary line just like so. 1, 2, 3. This is your simulated 9th step. Once you get to your 9th step, you can take a series of small turns and steps in a safe and controlled manner to create a turn. 9 heel to toe steps back. 1, 2, 3. Again, Paul. Once I tell you to start, make sure you're walking along that line, touching heel to toe, arms by your side, counting your steps out loud, looking down at your toes, and once you start, you cannot stop. Do you have any questions for me?
No, sir.
No? Okay, so whenever you're ready, you may begin.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 back.
As I instructed, sir.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay, Paul. So, this is going to be the one leg stand. At this point, I need you to put your feet together, arms by your side, just like this. Okay? And then, when I tell you to begin, or I need you to maintain that position until I tell you to begin. Do you understand, Paul? Okay. When I tell you to, you're going to raise whichever foot you desire, your whole leg. Left or right does not matter, it's your choice. And, no, when I tell you to begin, Paul, hold on.
I'll see which one I'm going to do.
When I tell you to begin, you're going to raise whichever foot, left or right, does not matter, approximately 6 inches off the ground. That foot's going to be parallel to the ground. Your legs are going to be straight, arms by your side, looking down at your toe and counting out loud just like this. 1001, 1002, 1003 until I tell you to stop. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate that real quick for you. It's going to look like this. 1001, 1002, 1003, and so on until I tell you to stop. Do you have any questions, Paul?
Okay. No.
Give me 1 second. Whenever you're ready, Paul, begin.
1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009, 1010, 1011, 1012, 1013, 1014, 1015, 1016, 1017, 1018, 1019, 1020.
Okay, go ahead and stop. All right, Paul. Next thing I'm asking you to do, feet together, arms by your side.
Like this?
Yes, sir. Just like that. Okay, what I'm going to do is 2 circles close to your face. Okay, come to a brief pause and come towards your nose. Okay, I'm not going to touch you, sir. I just need you to focus on it, just like the horizontal gaze and nystagmus exam. Okay. Okay. You ready? Yeah. Okay. One more time. Make sure you're keeping your head still, sir. Okay. All right, maintaining that position, I'm going to ask you to do another exam. What I need you to do with your feet together, arms by your side like I instructed. Go ahead and get in that position for me. Feet together. You're going to tilt your head back and close your eyes when I tell you to begin. No, when I tell you to, Paul. Okay. Just keep looking at me so you know what it looks like. When I tell you to begin, you'll tilt your head back and close your eyes. My eyes are early open because I'm demonstrating. And you're going to, once you believe the passage of 30 seconds has elapsed, look back at me, say stop, indicate to me that you're done the passage of 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, whenever you're ready, tilt your head back, close your eyes. Okay.
Yeah.
That was 30 seconds? Mm-hmm. How did you count exactly? Did you just count by numbers? Did you, like Mississippi's, anything like that?
Just regular numbers.
Just 1, 2, just like that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Paul. With your feet together, can you point down at the ground like this? Okay. Rotate your wrists outward like this. Okay, and I need you to stay in that position until I tell you to begin. Do you understand, Paul? Okay. When I tell you to begin, you're going to tilt your head back and close your eyes, and I'm going to call out either left or right. Can you raise your left hand for me? Right now. Can you raise your left hand for me? Okay, so you know your left from right. Okay. So when I tell you to, you're going to, when I call out left, for example, you're going to, with your head back, eyes closed, You're going to touch the tip of your nose with the tip of your finger and immediately back down. Don't use the pad of your finger. This is the pad of your finger. Don't use it. You're using the tip of your finger.
Okay.
Okay, same thing with right. Eyes back, or head back, eyes closed. Tip of the finger to your right index finger. Back down. Don't wait for me to tell you to drop it back down. Do you have any questions?
Nope.
Okay. Tilt your head back. Close your eyes. Left. Right. Left. Right. Right. Left. Okay, go ahead and relax, Paul. Okay, Paul. What's your highest level of education you've done?
Some college.
Some college? Okay. So you know the alphabet, you know the numbers, everything like that?
Yes.
Okay. Could you, without counting or without saying the song, the alphabet song, could you say the alphabet from C to P?
Backwards?
No, just C to P.
C to P?
Yes, sir. C and the alphabet to P.
C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P.
Okay. And could you count backwards from 54 to 41?
54, 53, 52, 51, 49, 48, 47, 46, 45, 44.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Paul. I'm gonna have to do the uncomfortable thing, right? Just turn around.
I got pins in my hips.
Okay, you sit straight across and sit all the way back.
My hips don't work like that.
Okay, just sit right here.
My hips don't work like
You
that.
just need to sit.
No.
Just have a seat. We'll tell you how to get
Listen,
in there.
you
need to
can't
sit.
tell me my hips hardly work. My hips don't work like that, bro. My hips don't work like that.
Get in.
My hips.
Okay.
Touch the grandma on.
Get in.
My hips don't work like that.
Sit
Touch the
down
grandma on.
Sit down
My hips don't work like
Okay,
that.
you need to get in.
I got bilateral hip surgery. I got bilateral hip surgery. I got bilateral hip surgery. My hips don't work like that. You push it on me.
Get in.
I got bilateral hip surgery. No.
Come on.
My hips don't
Hurry
work
up.
like that. I just told y'all.
Look,
Get the paddy wagon.
forward and move.
No.
Sit down. And
My hips
sit.
don't work like that.
Okay.
My hips don't work like. Touch the grandma on.
Okay, get in.
Touch the grandma on.
Get in.
Touch the grandma on. My hips don't work like that.
I need you to
My
stop.
hips don't
Stop.
work like.
It was after 2 in the morning on April 11th, 2022. Dallas police were rushing to a strip mall on Dallas Parkway in far north Dallas. The call that came in? Active shooter. Officers flooded the parking lot, ready for the worst. There was no shooter. It was an alleged fight. Someone thought a fist fight sounded like gunshots. The officers cleared the scene, told people to go home, made sure nobody missed their rideshare cars. Routine crowd dispersal, nothing more. Cedric Cheely was there that night. He wasn't a suspect. He wasn't involved in any fight. He lived within walking distance of that strip mall. He walked up to Sergeant John Matthew Martinez's patrol vehicle and struck up a casual conversation, joking about how many police were out that night.
Well, you don't want to drive intoxicated. There's too many police out here. You might go to jail.
Intoxicated.
Huh?
Martinez told him about the shooter call. They laughed it off together. Martinez told Cedric it was probably better he walk home rather than drive, suspecting he'd had some drinks. And here is where this story takes a turn that will make you sick. The body camera footage shows that Cedric eventually agreed to walk home. Officer Randy Roden even thanked him. It was done. The situation was resolved. Cedric was leaving. But here's what the body camera also caught Martinez, off to the side, telling fellow officers that the way to teach people like Cedric a lesson was to arrest them. People like Cedric. Let that phrase echo in your mind for a moment. Not people who were causing trouble, not people who were violent, people like Cedric. A black man in a parking lot at 2 in the morning who dared to know his rights and question whether he was actually intoxicated. Cedric came back toward the scene, unaware that his fate had already been decided by a sergeant who wanted to teach him a lesson. When he told officers that touching him without cause would be kidnapping, Roden was done with the conversation. No more. It's either yes or no. You go home, or I take you to jail. They arrested Cedric Cheely for public intoxication, and I want to be clear, he was never convicted. The officers didn't even show up to court. Instead, Cedric Cheely got 133 baton strikes to his feet, and then a federal judge gave the officer who did it qualified immunity. Let that sink in before we go any further.
Get your foot inside, man. Get your foot inside. Get your foot inside. Get your foot inside.
Why you?
Get your foot inside.
Why you hitting me?
Because you won't put it in. Put your foot in.
You ain't got no right to hit me.
If you are still watching, hit the like button and share this video right now. This is your way to support this channel in sharing stories that get swept under the rug. This channel exists because these stories need to be told, loudly and without apology. Subscribe, hit the bell, and let's get into it. Now here's where we need to slow down, because this detail is everything. The moment officers began walking Cedric toward the squad car, he told them something critical. He had pins in his hips from bilateral hip surgery. His hips did not function the way a person without that surgery would. Getting into the back of a standard police squad car with his hands cuffed behind his back was not something his body could physically do the way they were demanding. He dropped to the ground. Officers called it resisting. But Cedric was 6 feet 6 inches tall and 325 pounds. His hips had surgical hardware in them. Forcing him into a cramped back seat of a squad car in handcuffs was causing him physical pain. And so he asked clearly, out loud, on camera, for a paddy wagon. A larger transport vehicle. Standard equipment that police departments use for exactly this kind of situation. Not a limousine. Not special treatment. A vehicle that fit his body. He asked for it twice. On camera, with witnesses. Sergeant Martinez's own sworn declaration later acknowledged that Cedric repeatedly demanded a paddy wagon. A senior corporal's own declaration confirmed that Cedric acknowledged he was going to jail. He wasn't refusing arrest. He wasn't refusing transport. He was asking for a vehicle his body could physically fit into. So why didn't they get the paddy wagon? Martinez gave 2 reasons in his declaration. 1, there were priority calls on the radio. 2, the paddy wagon was in another division and would require a formal request. That's it. That was the trade-off. A disabled black man's legal right to reasonable accommodation versus the inconvenience of making a radio request. They chose convenience. They forced Cedric into the back of a standard squad car. They got him in there, and then an officer noticed that Cedric's feet were hanging out of the open rear window. Now, I need you to really be present for this next part, because the numbers matter. Cedric Chili was handcuffed. He was inside the vehicle. His feet were extended out of the open window, not because he was trying to escape, not because he was attacking anyone, but because his surgically altered hips were in pain and he needed to stretch his legs for relief. Sergeant Martinez ordered him to pull his feet in. He ordered it 53 times. And then he pulled out his baton. Dallas Police Department's own written policy, General Order 901, classifies the baton as an intermediate impact weapon. Their own use of force continuum places the baton at the level of active aggression, 2 full tiers above passive resistance. Active aggression means someone is physically attacking you or posing an immediate physical threat. Cedric Chili was handcuffed in the back of a car with his feet out the window. That is not active aggression. That is a disabled man in pain. And Sergeant Martinez hit him with that baton 133 times. 133 times. On his feet. On the bottom of his feet, the sides of his feet, the top of his feet. Over and over and over again. While Cedric asked why he was being hit, while he said the officer had no right to do this. While 3 other officers stood around and watched every single swing and did not once say, stop. Not once. It felt like red ants stinging the bottom of my feet, Cedric said afterward. Repeatedly. That's the best way I can explain it. He didn't just walk away from that night sore. Cedric Chili has permanent nerve damage in his feet. Nerve damage that, as he put it himself, is going to last him for the rest of his life. It is not going away. And after all 133 strikes, after all that pain, after all that the officers still couldn't get his feet inside the vehicle. So you know what they did? They drove him to Dallas County Jail with his feet hanging out of the moving car window. No seatbelt, feet outside a moving police vehicle on a Dallas highway. Because apparently repositioning him was too much work after they'd already beaten him over 100 times. I want you to think about the mentality it takes to look at that situation. A handcuffed, disabled black man, crying out in pain, asking why he's being beaten, and keep swinging. For 133 strikes. And then shrug and drive off with his feet out the window. Before I get to the investigation, I need to share with you what the Dallas City Attorney's Office had the audacity to write in their legal brief. Page 1. Opening sentence. They described what happened as Sergeant Martinez lightly tapping his baton on Chili's feet. Lightly tapping. Martinez himself, in his sworn declaration, described it as more flicking the baton to inflict an annoyance. An annoyance. 133 strikes. Permanent nerve damage. An annoyance. The civil rights attorney on this case, Brandon Greil, was so struck by that language that he actually picked up a police baton himself and had people lightly tap themselves with it, colleagues, family members. After just a handful of gentle taps, it hurt. The skin started stinging, and that's without any real force. After fewer than 20 strikes, now imagine 133. There is nothing light about what happened to Cedric Cheely's feet that night. Here is what makes this case even more maddening. Dallas Police Department's own Internal Affairs Division did the right thing at first. 9 months after the incident, they completed their investigation. They reviewed every second of body camera footage. They counted the strikes, 133, confirmed, undisputed. And they concluded that the force was unnecessary, that it was not authorized, that it violated department policy. All 4 officers received written reprimands for transporting a prisoner improperly. Martinez specifically received an additional reprimand for inappropriate use of force and for failing to complete what DPD calls a response to resistance report, the form where an officer has to explain in writing why they used level of force they used. The fact that this report was never completed tells you everything, because to complete it, Martinez would have had to write down a justification for hitting a handcuffed disabled man 133 times with a baton while 3 officers watched. And there is no justification for that. On January 17, 2023, Sergeant Martinez signed off on his written reprimand. It went on his record, alongside 41 commendations. But here's the gut punch. 7 days later, Assistant Police Chief Michael Igo, who is now the interim Dallas Police Chief, stepped in and rescinded the reprimands for 3 of the officers related to the improper prisoner transport. His letter said, after careful review, it was his decision to rescind the recommendation. No further explanation. No accountability. 3 officers who stood and watched 133 baton strikes walked away with nothing on their record. DPD declined to comment publicly, citing the ongoing lawsuit. And by the way, Cedric was charged with public intoxication. The officers never showed up to court. He was not convicted. Cedric Cheely filed a federal civil rights lawsuit. He argued 2 things. First, that the baton strikes violated his 4th Amendment right against unreasonable seizure, in other words, excessive force. Second, that the 3 officers who stood there and watched violated his rights by failing to intervene. The case landed in the courtroom of Judge Brantley Starr of the Northern District of Texas, and Judge Starr granted qualified immunity to all 4 officers. Now let me explain qualified immunity to you, because this doctrine is one of the most powerful and most unjust shields in American law. And you need to understand exactly how it works to understand why Cedric lost. Qualified immunity was not written by Congress. It was not in the original civil rights statute that was meant to protect people like Cedric. Section 1983, passed in 1871, says that a government official who violates your constitutional rights shall be liable, full stop. That law was written in the aftermath of the Civil War specifically to protect Black Americans from exactly this kind of state-sanctioned violence. But in the 1980s, the Supreme Court layered something on top of it. They said that even if an officer violates your rights, they get immunity, unless you can point to a prior court decision with facts close enough to theirs that any reasonable officer should have known their conduct was unconstitutional. In other words, you have to find a previous case where a cop did almost exactly the same thing and a court said it was unconstitutional. If that previous case doesn't exist, the officer walks free no matter what they did. And here's the trap, the spiral that one conservative Fifth Circuit judge named Don Willett has publicly called a Kafkaesque stairwell. Courts increasingly skip the question of whether something was unconstitutional and just grant immunity because there's no prior case. But if courts never say something is unconstitutional, then there's never a prior case to point to. So the next victim can't find precedent either, and the cycle continues. Heads, the defendant wins. Tails, the plaintiff loses. That is the doctrine that swallowed Cedric Cheely's case. Judge Starr's ruling was 6 pages long. 6 pages for a man with permanent nerve damage who was struck 133 times while handcuffed and disabled. Judge Starr skipped the question of whether the force was unconstitutional altogether. He went straight to prong 2. Is the law clearly established? He said Cedric failed to identify a single prior case where an officer acting under similar circumstances was found to have violated the Constitution. And because of that, Martinez was entitled to immunity as a matter of law. The other 3 officers got immunity too, because if Martinez didn't violate a clearly established right, there was nothing for them to have intervened to stop. But here is what made me stop and stare at this ruling. Judge Starr's entire analysis rests on one assumption that Cedric was choosing to keep his feet out the window, that he was deliberately disobeying commands rather than physically being unable to comply. But that's exactly what's in dispute. That's the whole point. Cedric told the officers more than 30 times that he had surgical pins in his hips and could not position his body the way they demanded. The officers themselves acknowledged this in their sworn declarations. The city's own legal brief admitted he asked for the paddy wagon. Whether Cedric could comply or whether he was refusing to comply is a factual question, and at the stage of the case where this ruling was made summary judgment, factual disputes are supposed to go to a jury. The judge is not supposed to resolve them, but Judge Starr resolved it against Cedric. And here is the detail that I believe is critical in 6 pages about a disabled black man who was beaten 133 times. Judge Starr never once used the word disability. Not once. Now, I'm going to share something with you that stopped me cold when I learned it. Before Judge Brantley Starr was a federal judge, he was a law clerk. His first judicial mentor, the man from whom he learned to read the law, was Judge Don Willett of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. The same Judge Don Willett who has publicly, in written opinions, criticized qualified immunity as a Kafkaesque spiral. The same Judge Willett who wrote in 2018 that this doctrine creates an infinite loop where constitutional questions go unanswered precisely because they go unanswered. Judge Starr's qualified immunity ruling in Cedric Cheely's case is a textbook example of exactly what his own mentor said was broken about this doctrine. And I want to be fair, Judge Starr is not a timid judge. When he believes a constitutional right is being violated, he writes with force. He once ordered Southwest Airlines lawyers into 8 hours of religious liberty training as a court sanction. He has written that religious discrimination in America is becoming socially acceptable, but legally intolerable. He has that voice. He has that moral clarity when he chooses to use it. Cedric Cheely, handcuffed, disabled, black, beaten 133 times, with permanent nerve damage, whose attackers were found by their own department to have violated policy, did not get that version of Judge Starr. We have to talk about the context of what happened in that parking lot before the baton ever came out. Martinez decided on camera that the way to teach people like Cedric a lesson was to arrest him. Cedric had done nothing violent. He had agreed to walk home. He was leaving. The only thing Cedric had done was know his rights, push back verbally, and refuse to be dismissed. This happens to black men in America in a pattern so consistent it has its own documented history. The assertion of rights, the refusal to be invisible, coded as a threat. The decision to arrest, not because of danger, but because of pride. Because of the need to teach someone a lesson. And then, when the physical confrontation came, when a disabled black man's body literally could not comply with what was being demanded, that physical reality was treated as defiance. His pain was treated as resistance, and the response to that perceived defiance was 133 strikes with a baton. The nerve damage in Cedric Cheely's feet is permanent. He did not get that from a fair fight. He got it from a system that decided he needed to be taught a lesson, and then when the lesson started causing visible harm, kept going anyway. Here is where I need you to pay close attention, because this story is not finished. This is not a story about something that happened and was resolved. This is happening right now. Cedric Cheely's case is currently before the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Attorney Brandon Griel is fighting for him, and the appeal is live. The Fifth Circuit will review this case completely fresh, what lawyers call de novo review. They are not bound by Judge Starr's analysis. They look at the full record as if they are seeing it for the first time and issue their own ruling. There are strong arguments for reversal. First, the disability issue was never addressed. Judge Starr never acknowledged that whether Cedric could comply was a disputed fact that belonged to a jury. That alone may be reversible error. Second, the Supreme Court has recognized that some cases of excessive force are so obvious that they do not require a prior precedent with identical facts. 133 baton strikes against a handcuffed disabled man whose own department sustained use of force violations could be argued to fall in that category. Third, the constitutional question was skipped entirely. The appeals court may find that it needs to be addressed directly. The Fifth Circuit is not a court known for its progressivism, but it contains judges, including Don Willett himself, who have put their criticism of qualified immunity in writing. The argument being made on Cedric's behalf is not a radical one. It is simply this. A man with permanent nerve damage, beaten 133 times while handcuffed, whose attacker's own department found policy violations, deserves to have a jury hear his case. He deserves his day in court. As this appeal moves forward, there are things to watch. Will the Fifth Circuit reach the constitutional question that Judge Starr skipped? Will they address the disability argument, the fact that could not comply and refuse to comply are two entirely different things with two entirely different legal implications? Will they apply the obvious case standard and find that this situation is so clearly excessive that no prior precedent is needed? And if they do send this back, if Cedric finally gets his jury, what does accountability actually look like for 133 strikes? Permanent nerve damage, And 4 officers who either swung the baton or stood and watched? These are the questions that are being answered right now in a federal appeals court on behalf of a black disabled man who just wanted a paddy wagon and ended up with a life sentence of nerve damage instead. We will be covering every development in this case as it moves through the Fifth Circuit. If you want to stay updated, if you believe that stories like Cedric Cheely's deserve to stay in the public conversation, if you're tired of watching black people get beaten and watching courts invent reasons why nobody has to answer for it, subscribe to this channel, share this video, because the only thing more powerful than a corrupt system is a public that refuses to look away. Cedric Cheely is still waiting for justice. The least we can do is make sure the world knows his name.
Alright. Get your foot inside, man. Get your foot inside. Get your foot inside. Get your foot inside. Get your foot inside.
Why are you hitting me?
Because you won't put it in. Put your foot in.
You ain't got no right to hit me.
And put your foot in. You're not listening.
You have no right to hit me.
I do.
No, you don't.
You're not listening.
No.
Yes, sir.
Can I talk to you for a minute?
Talk to me right here.
I understand that you own one of these as well?
No, it's not one of them.
Right?
No, it's not one of them. Talk to me.
Huh?
Talk to me. I'm listening.
I'm asking you. You own one of these, but not this one
I
specifically,
own
right?
all of them, yes.
So they have a trespassing affidavit?
I own this one too.
Okay. He's saying you don't.
I know what he's saying. I bought this store.
Okay.
I bought this
so
store.
how come you're not allowed to your own store if you bought it?
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not allowed.
Well,
I've never seen it.
because you locked it up.
What?
The actual owner, you saw him walking in here.
I'm the actual owner.
He's got the affidavit already signed off for trespassing.
What affidavit?
The affidavit that they showed me. And I'll show it to you gladly. But if they're asking you to leave,
I'm not leaving.
to leave?
You can show me the affidavit.
Okay, put your hands on your back.
No, show me the affidavit.
Put your hands on your back.
What for what?
Easy. Trespassing. Easy. Stand up for me.
Man,
Easy.
can I?
You resist, it's another charge.
Nah, bro, I'm not resisting. I'm not resisting, bro. I'm not resisting.
Something you resist, I'm stacking another
I'm
charge.
not resisting, bro.
You pulling your arm away from
No,
me.
I'm not resisting, bro. I can't believe you're doing this, dog.
Relax. Hands back.
Bro, come on, dog. I can't believe you're doing this shit, dog. Bro, come on, man. I ain't do nothing, dog. Why you doing this, bro? Why you doing this, bro? I ain't do nothing. Bro, this not right, dog.
I got suspect resistance.
That's not right, dog.
Hands behind your
No,
back.
man, get off me, man. Get off me, man.
Behind.
No, I ain't do nothing, dog.
You're under arrest.
No, I'm not.
Trespassing.
You ain't even show me the affidavit.
I ain't gonna show you nothing.
Yeah, you
right
do.
Now. Get your hands behind your
Nah,
back.
man.
You're already taking another charge. You want your taste?
No, I ain't do
You want
nothing.
your taste?
What you gonna tase me for?
Feel that? You got about 3 seconds to comply, or I'm about to take
What you gonna tase me for, bro? Ah! Bro, what you gonna tase? I ain't do nothing, bro.
Hey,
Nah, bro.
Turn around. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. Now, behind your back.
April 13th, 2026, Houston, Texas. A Monday afternoon, a man is standing outside a business he built from nothing. He has his phone out. He is live streaming not because he expected anything dramatic to happen, but because he wanted witnesses. What happened next is now one of the most watched videos on the internet this week. And once you understand the full story behind it, you will understand exactly why. This channel exists because stories like this one deserve more than a 30-second clip in a comment section. If you are new here, subscribe right now because we do not let these stories disappear. Hit the bell, share this video before you finish watching it. Someone in your circle needs to see this today. Now, let's get into it. Marcus Bowser did not grow up with advantages. He grew up off Martin Luther King Boulevard in Houston, Texas, which tells you everything you need to know about the environment he was navigating from the jump. No generational wealth, no safety net, no connections opening doors. What he had was a co-founder named Warren Broadnax, a fellow Houston native he met while both of them were serving in the United States Navy. 2 young black men from the same city, the same struggle, the same hunger to build something that was actually theirs. In 2012, they pooled every dollar they had between them, $900, and started selling hair extensions out of the trunks of their cars. That is not a metaphor. That is literally what happened. 2 veterans, 2 car trunks, $900, and a gap in the market they saw clearly. Black women in Houston were being underserved by an industry that either ignored them or overcharged them for quality hair products. Bowser and Broadnax moved into that gap and never looked back. The company they built is called She's Happy Hair. Today, it has 5 locations across Texas, 3 in Houston, 1 in Dallas, 1 in Arlington. Over 220,000 followers on Facebook, over 235,000 on Instagram, the company calls itself the #1 virgin hair supplier in the United States. Revenue by multiple independent accounts has crossed $100 million. $100 million built from 900. That is the American dream. That is exactly the story this country tells black people they are supposed to chase. Work hard, serve your country, build something real, and you will be rewarded. Marcus Bowser did all of it. And on April 13th, 2026, he ended up in handcuffs in the back of a police car outside his own store for over an hour. When the video first hit social media, the 30-second version was everywhere. A black man, a cop, a taser, a business he co-founded. That is enough to make anyone's blood run cold, and it should. But this story has layers that the clip does not show. And those layers matter because they make what happened not less outrageous, but more specific. And specific is what leads to accountability. So let's go all the way back. In November 2024, Warren Broadnax Bowser's co-founder, his Navy colleague, the man who started this thing with him when they both had $900 and a dream, filed a lawsuit against Bowser. The complaint, later amended in February 2026, contains serious allegations. It claims that Bowser transferred $90,000 from company accounts into his personal bank account over 5 days in October 2024. It accuses him of using company credit cards for personal expenses, of aggressive behavior toward employees, and of forcing store closures that cost the business revenue. The complaint states directly that those withdrawals left the company unable to order inventory, maintain operations, or meet payroll. Those are not small accusations. They describe someone actively dismantling a company from the inside. Bowser denies all of it. He responded with a countersuit earlier in 2026, accusing Broadnax of the exact same category of behavior improper expenditures, restricting access to company meetings and financial data, and hiring family members through what the filing calls extreme nepotism. So now you have two co-founders, both accusing each other of stealing from the company they built together. And the employees? Their sworn statements cut directly down the middle. One affidavit from January accuses Bowser of intimidating workers and calls Broadnax a stabilizing presence. Another affidavit, signed by the mother of a different employee, claims Broadnax instructed staff to exaggerate or fabricate incidents involving Bowser entirely. Two sworn statements, opposite stories, both under oath. This is the context. A company worth $100 million being torn apart from the inside by the two men who built it together from $900. And this civil war had been playing out in Harris County courtrooms for months before a single police officer showed up. In December 2025, a judge granted a temporary restraining order against Bowser. Multiple reports confirmed that this order barred him from entering the company's business locations and that it was one of several such orders issued since the lawsuit was filed. Courts had been intervening in this dispute repeatedly, and repeatedly on Broadnax's side. Here is the critical detail. Under Texas law, temporary restraining orders generally expire after 14 days. The December order expired in January 2026. As of the day of the incident, April 13th, there is no publicly available record of an active, current court order barring Marcus Bowser from that specific location. That matters enormously. Because what happened on April 13th turned entirely on the question of whether Bowser had a legal right to be there. And based on the public record, he did. April 13th. Bowser shows up at one of the Houston locations. Employees block him from entering. He does not force his way in. He does not escalate physically. He does what a person who believes they are being wronged is supposed to do. He calls the police. He wants help getting into his own store. He starts live streaming because he wants the world to see exactly what is happening. A Houston police officer arrives. What follows is visible in the footage. The officer tells Bowser he has seen an affidavit stating Bowser is no longer the owner of the business. Bowser, who is still listed as co-owner in court documents and tax records at that very moment, pushes back. He says that is not accurate. He says he purchased this store. He says he co-owns this company. Then Bowser asks to see the affidavit. That is a reasonable request. That is the only reasonable request. If someone is about to remove you from a property based on a document, you have an obvious and legitimate interest in seeing that document. Any attorney in the country will tell you that. Any person with basic common sense will tell you that. The officer does not show the affidavit. The officer tells Bowser to put his hands behind his back. Bowser asks what he is being charged with. The officer says, on camera, that he is stacking charges. Those two words, stacking charges, are not de-escalation language. They are a threat. They tell a person that asking questions will cost them. They are designed to produce fear and compliance, not clarity and resolution. What Bowser had done at the exact moment those words were used was ask a legal question while standing still. The taser fires. Marcus Bowser, Navy veteran, college graduate, co-founder of a $100 million company, is handcuffed and placed in the back of a patrol car. He sits there for over an hour. When he requests a supervisor, a sergeant arrives. By Bowser's own account, the sergeant actually listened to both sides. The sergeant did not tase anyone. The sergeant de-escalated, which proves something important. What the first officer did was a choice. It was not the only option available to him in that moment. Another officer, arriving at the exact same scene, made a completely different choice. That contrast is not incidental. That contrast is the whole point. Here is the detail that should be making national news and isn't getting nearly enough attention. As of right now, the affidavit the officer claimed to have seen has not been produced. Not to Bowser, not to his legal team, not to the media. It does not appear in Harris County court records. For a trespass enforcement to be valid in Texas, there needs to be a trespass affidavit, a written, signed document filed with law enforcement that authorizes police to remove a specific person from a specific property. Without that document, the entire legal foundation for the trespass arrest is questionable from the first step. No active court order, no producible affidavit, a co-owner on record in court documents and tax filings, and a taser. The Houston Police Department has not publicly commented on the incident. No charges against Bowser have been announced. No charges against the officer have been filed. The case is still entirely in limbo as of this video. The controlling legal standard for police use of force comes from Graham versus Connor, a 1989 Supreme Court case. Courts examining use of force claims look at three things: the severity of the crime, whether the suspect posed an immediate physical threat, and whether the suspect was actively resisting or fleeing. Walk that standard against what was on that sidewalk. The alleged offense was trespassing a Class B misdemeanor in Texas. That sits at the lower end of the severity scale. There is no video evidence of Bowser posing a physical threat to anyone. He was standing. He was talking, he was asking questions, he was not running, he was not raising his hands, he was not moving toward the officer aggressively. He was asking what he was being charged with. Asking that question, clearly and firmly, while standing still, is not under any legal standard that exists in this country justification for deploying a taser. If Bowser pursues a civil rights claim under Section 1983 of the Federal Code, the officer will almost certainly raise qualified immunity as a defense. That doctrine protects officers from personal civil liability unless the constitutional violation was clearly established at the time of the incident. Whether the specific facts here, a co-owner, no valid court order on record, asking a question before being tased, clear that bar is ultimately what a court would have to decide. But the factual foundation for a serious lawsuit is right there in the video, every second of it. Now, here is the part of the story that is uncomfortable to say out loud, and this channel does not skip the uncomfortable parts. Marcus Bowser called the police. He called them for help. He dialed 911 in the middle of a business dispute because he believed he had a right to be in that building, and he wanted someone with authority to help him exercise that right. That was a reasonable thing to believe. Based on the public record, his legal position appears to have been correct. He had every right to make that call. And what happened when the police arrived is now a viral video of a black man being tased outside a business he co-founded. That is not an argument against calling for help. People have every right to call for help. But it is a documented, recorded, live-streamed reminder of the gap that still exists in this country between what that call is supposed to produce and what it actually produces, depending on who is answering and who is standing on that sidewalk. A business dispute between two private parties over ownership and access is not a criminal matter. It is a civil matter. It was already in a courtroom. It had been in a courtroom for months. Judges had been issuing orders. Depositions had been taken. A trial was months away. An officer arriving with a taser and a decision already made does not resolve a civil dispute. It sets it on fire. And it does something else, too. It reminds every black business owner in this country, every black entrepreneur who did everything the script said to do, that the distance between success and a patrol car can be exactly one misunderstood phone call. In an interview after the incident, Bowser said, "I feel I was wrongfully tased. I'm glad it was live streamed. And I'm blessed he didn't pull his gun, that it was just the taser this time." This time, 2 words. Read them slowly. He also wrote this in his Instagram caption. Imagine growing up off Martin Luther King, joining the military, graduating college with a business degree, building a brand from the ground up, going from $800 to 9 figures in sales, creating jobs and opportunities across the country only to face internal disputes and escalation beyond the boardroom. That is not bitterness. That is exhaustion. And it is the specific, particular exhaustion of a black man in America who played by every rule, built something extraordinary, and still ended up in handcuffs outside his own store while his country watched on a live stream. The civil lawsuit between Bowser and Broadnax is unresolved. Both men were deposed on April 8th. A trial is likely several months away. The affidavit the officer referenced has not been produced publicly. HPD has not commented. No charges have been filed against anyone. The story is not over, not by a long way. This channel will stay on it. When HPD responds, if they respond, you will hear it here. When the civil case produces a new filing, you will hear it here. When that affidavit surfaces, or is confirmed not to exist, you will hear it here. Marcus Bowser built a company worth $100 million. He served his country. He did everything this society tells black men to do to prove they belong. And on April 13th, 2026, he sat in the back of a police car for over an hour outside his own store because someone he called for help arrived and decided a taser was the answer. That is where we are. If this video found you, share it before you leave. Subscribe if you are not already here, and drop your thoughts in the comments because this conversation is not finished. The cameras will try to move on. We don't move on. See you in the next one.
Get off me, man.
Okay.
No, I ain't doing nothing, though.
You're under arrest.
No, I'm not.
Trespassing.
You ain't even show me the affidavit.
I ain't gonna show you nothing.
Yeah, you
right
do.
now. Get your hands behind your
Nah,
back.
man.
You're already taking another charge. You want your case?
No, I ain't do
Want
nothing.
your case?
What you gonna tase me for?
Feel that? You got about 3 seconds to comply, or I'm about to take
What you gonna
back.
tase me for, bro? Ah! Bro, what you gonna tase? I ain't do nothing, bro.
Hey,
Nah, bro.
Turn around. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. Now, behind your back.
Hey, don't grab her like that, homie.
You can't jump this.
Don't grab her like that, dog.
Yes, but listen.
Hey, bitch ass nigga. Hey, let me get your badge number. Let me get your badge number. What the fuck that gonna do, nigga?
On the 21st of May, 2025, a San Bernardino police officer arrived at a grocery store parking lot, walked up behind a 17-year-old girl without a single word of warning, grabbed her by her backpack, pinned her arms behind her back, partially handcuffed her so she could not protect herself, and then flipped her body into the air and slammed her face first into the concrete. She weighed 90 pounds. She lost consciousness before she even hit the ground. She woke up on the freeway in a police car, blood soaking through her shirt, her chin split open and still bleeding, her wrist dislocated, her brain traumatized, her memory fractured, permanent scars on her face, 8 stitches under her chin, a traumatic brain injury she is still living with today. She was days away from walking across a stage to collect her high school diploma, and the officer, when she asked him what happened to her, he looked her in the eye and said, "You fell." If this is your first time here, this channel exists because stories like this one cannot be allowed to disappear. Hit subscribe right now. Every single subscriber tells the algorithm this story matters. Like this video and tell me where you are watching from. A high school senior in San Bernardino, California, with graduation literally days away. This is not a person anyone with a functioning conscience looks at and sees a threat. This is a child. A child who went to a grocery store after school and never came home the same. Now, before a single police officer even pulled into that parking lot, Aaron had already been through something that day. Inside the Food 4 Less on West 2nd Street, a group of teenagers had been bullying and assaulting other young people. It got bad enough that a security guard had to deploy pepper spray inside the store to stop the attacks. And Aaron? Aaron was one of the people those teenagers attacked. She was a victim. Before any of this happened, before any officer laid a hand on her, she had already been assaulted by someone else in that building. So what did she do after being attacked? She did what any teenager would do. She walked outside to find her friends. That is it. That is the full extent of what she did. She crossed a parking lot toward people she knew who were standing outside. Not fighting, not running, just standing. And witnesses saw the whole thing. When officers arrived, those witnesses told them directly Aaron was attacked. Aaron did nothing wrong. Aaron is not the aggressor here. Let that sit for a second, because it matters enormously for what comes next. Officers Jackson Tubbs and Cynthia Guillen responded to the scene. both wearing body cameras. And a witness in that parking lot was also recording on a cell phone. So we have 3 cameras, 3 angles, rolling simultaneously. Everything that happened next is on tape. Officer Tubbs spotted Erin walking across the parking lot toward her friends. He did not call out to her. He did not identify himself. He did not issue a single verbal command. He gave her no instruction to stop, no instruction to identify herself, nothing. He walked up behind her and grabbed her by her backpack. Erin, 90 pounds, was jerked off balance immediately. She felt the pull on her backpack and did what any person would instinctively do. She reached to remove it. That is it. That is what happened. She reached for her own backpack, and Tubbs responded by pinning both of her arms behind her back and placing her in handcuffs. One cuff on her wrist, the second never made it on. So now she is partially restrained. Arms pinned, one wrist cuffed, hands completely unable to move freely, unable to catch herself, unable to brace for anything. And then Officer Tubbs performed a hip toss. He launched a 90-pound, 17-year-old girl into the air. Her legs flew over her head, and she came down face first, head first, onto asphalt, onto concrete. She had no free hands. She could not protect her face. She could not break her fall. There was nothing between her skull and that ground. She lost consciousness on impact. The last thing she heard before everything went black was Officer Tubbs telling her to stop resisting. Stop resisting. She was unconscious before she even finished falling. Blood poured immediately from a gash beneath her chin. Her friends, visible in the witness video, are screaming. Erin Kauser did not get up. She was out cold on the pavement outside a grocery store on a Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, I need you to understand something. Before Officer Tubbs grabbed her, Erin had no blood on her face, no injuries. She was walking upright. The body camera footage from Officer Guillen confirms this. The cell phone video confirms this. The sequence is not in dispute. It is on camera. She regained consciousness on the freeway, moving fast. Somewhere she did not recognize. She looked down and saw blood on her shirt, on her body, her chin still actively leaking. She looked up and found the officer. He had her phone in his hand. She asked him, "What happened to me? What did you do to me?" He said, "You fell," and then she blacked out again. She woke up in a hospital bed, traumatic brain injury, 8 stitches beneath her chin, permanent scarring on her face, dislocated wrist, back injuries, memory loss she continues to experience today. Now, here is where this case goes from being a use of force incident to something far more deliberate. Because according to the lawsuit filed in San Bernardino County Superior Court, Officer Tubbs did not say, "You fell once and stop there." That was just the beginning. When Erin's grandmother arrived, Tubbs told her the injuries came from the fight inside the store, not from the takedown from the other teenagers. He told Erin's aunt the same story. He told Erin's mother, Tanya Brownridge, the same story in a phone call made from the patrol car while they were en route to the hospital. That call is captured on body cam. He described his daughter's condition as and I want you to hear this, a little cut from the fight on her face. Officer Guillen was in that car. She heard every word. She said nothing to correct it. And then, according to court documents, that same false account was repeated to the doctor treating Erin at the hospital. 5 separate people, 5 separate occasions, the same lie, told while body camera footage existed that demolished every single word of it. Attorney Tony Jaramillo said it plainly at the April 2026 press conference, and I am going to paraphrase her words from the public record. This was not a mistake. It was violence, followed by deliberate dishonesty. An officer took a petite, unarmed teenage girl with her hands behind her back and hip-tossed her face first onto concrete. Then he lied about it. And when the truth came out, the department still refused to correct the record. Let me say that again. According to the lawsuit, even after an officer admitted during a formal use of force review that false information had been provided, the San Bernardino Police Department issued no public correction, no statement, no retraction, nothing. Now, I want to talk about something that does not get discussed enough when cases like this surface. Officer Jackson Tubbs was not a first-time subject of concern. In 2023, Tubbs was involved in a separate incident. That prior matter resulted in the city of San Bernardino agreeing to a settlement of nearly $4,900,000 finalized in 2025, the same year he flipped Erin Kauser into concrete. Nearly $5 million. That is the price tag San Bernardino taxpayers paid for a prior incident involving this same officer. And he was still on the streets, still in uniform, still responding to calls. So, when Aaron's father, a military veteran who served this country for 15 years, stood at a microphone outside the San Bernardino Police Department and said he did not appreciate a male officer handling his 17-year-old daughter the way she was handled, and called it a direct violation of her human rights, understand that he is not speaking in a vacuum. He served 15 years for this country. 15 years. And he came home to watch body cam footage of his daughter being slammed into concrete and lied to about it. He said, and these are his words from the public record, "This needs to stop. There is nothing I can add to that." Let me give you the current facts as they stand. The civil lawsuit was filed in San Bernardino County Superior Court in April 2026. It names Officer Tubbs, Officer Guillen, and the City of San Bernardino as defendants. The claims include excessive force, assault, battery, negligence, and civil rights violations under California's Bain Civil Rights Act and the Ralph Civil Rights Act. Body cam footage and witness video are cited as central evidence. All misdemeanor charges against Aaron trespassing, allegedly attempting to fight, were dropped. Every single one. The city and the department have declined all comment, citing pending litigation. As of today, no verdict has been entered. No settlement has been announced. The case is in the courts. And Erin Kauser is 18 years old now. She says she has headaches almost every day. She says she is not the same person she was before May 21st, 2025. At the press conference, she said, "I just want somebody to be responsible for what happened to me, because I didn't do anything wrong." 2 cameras and 1 cell phone were rolling that afternoon. They captured a girl walking across a parking lot. They captured what happened to her. They captured what was said afterward. Here is what I need you to sit with. Erin Kauser went to a grocery store after school. She was attacked by other teenagers inside that store, making her a victim before a single officer arrived. She walked outside. She was given no commands, no warnings, no instructions. An officer grabbed her from behind, partially handcuffed her so she could not protect herself, and threw her face first into the ground. Then he lied about it, to her face, to her family, to her doctor, multiple times, on camera. She graduated high school days later in bandages. She is 18 with daily headaches and a permanently scarred face and a brain that does not work the way it did before that Wednesday afternoon. And the department that employed the officer who did this to her has still not corrected the record publicly. This is why this channel exists. Because Erin's story deserves to be seen. Because accountability requires witnesses. Because silence is how these stories disappear. If this video reached you, share it. Right now. Send it to somebody. Post it. The more eyes on this case, the harder it becomes to ignore. Subscribe if you are not already here. We cover these stories because they matter, because Black lives matter, and because the pattern does not end until enough people refuse to look away. We will be watching this case. When there are developments, we will bring them to you. Erin Kauser said she just wants somebody to be responsible. So do we.